Daily Bible Time. Good morning, Friday morning. Dominic Steele here. And hey, look, do be with us for Village Church Online this Sunday, 9:30am or 6pm. John Kwan speaking. That You Might Believe is the series from John's Gospel, and a great time to invite friends to join us who may not have a personal relationship with the Lord Jesus. Now, the forces of David and the forces of Absalom do battle in 2 Samuel 18 today. And Absalom is looking to kill his father, and his goal is to make his own kingship secure. David has briefed his generals and all his armies, and his final briefing line to them before the battle was, he said, "Treat the young man Absalom gently for my sake." And the line is, all the people heard the king's orders to all the commanders about Absalom. Now, the report of the battle commences in verse 6. Then David's forces marched into the field to engage Israel in battle, which took place in the forest of Ephraim. Israel's army was defeated by David's soldiers, and the slaughter there was vast that day, 20,000 dead. Now, we said yesterday that the terms thousand and hundred might mean regiment and unit, rather than referring to specific numbers of troops. But even if it's a regiment rather than a full 1,000 of people, 20 regiments dead, that is a lot of bloodshed. And actually, in the discussion we were canvassing yesterday, when the people were discussing with David about whether or not he would go out to the battlefield, they said, yeah, look, even if 10,000 of us die, it's more crucial for you to stay alive. And they were canvassing, well, what happens if 10,000 of us die? Well, what's happened is 20,000 have died, twice as many as they were exploring that possibility of yesterday. And it is an interesting line, though. Verse 8, the battle spread over the entire area, and that day the forest claimed more people than the sword. Now, I was wrestling with what that means. I read the commentator John Woodhouse. He suggested it means, and it does make sense to me, that there were more fatal accidents in the wild undergrowth and treacherous terrain than were people killed in actual combat. Anyway, the big event of the battle was what's going to happen to Absalom. Remember, David is hiding back in shelter at the town or the city. Verse 9, Absalom was riding on his mule when he happened to meet David's soldiers. Now, not a surprise to us, Absalom on a mule. Do remember the Bible writer's criticism of trusting in horses and chariots. It would seem as though there was a chase, and Absalom on his mule moving through the undergrowth, moving through the forest, the treacherous forest. Perhaps Absalom turned to look behind at his pursuers. He didn't duck. There was a branch, and when the mule went under the tangled branches of a large oak tree, Absalom's head was caught fast in the tree. The mule under him kept going. He was suspended in midair. And I'm picturing, remember Absalom, wild long hair, caught in this branch, hanging. Verse 10, one of the men saw him and informed Joab. He said, "I just saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree." "You just saw him?" Joab exclaimed. "Why didn't you strike him to the ground right there? I would have given you 10 pieces of silver and a belt, a reward." The man replied to Joab, "Even if I had the weight of 1,000 pieces of silver in my hand, you offered me 10. Even if I had 1,000, a reward 100 times more than you were offering, I wouldn't do it. It wouldn't be worth it." Why wouldn't it be worth it to him? "I would not raise my hand against the king's son. We heard the king command you, Abishai and Ittai, protect the young man Absalom for me. If I had jeopardized my own life and nothing is hidden from the king, you would have abandoned me." Now, the soldier talking to his general. Seems pretty clear that they both know that Joab would have been pleased with the outcome, the death of Absalom, and yet he would have allowed his soldier to be thrown under the bus when David heard about how Absalom died and who did it. Joab is impatient. Verse 14, "I'm not going to waste time with you." He took 3 spears in his hand, thrust them into Absalom's chest. While Absalom was still alive in the oak tree, 10 young men who were Joab's armor-bearers surrounded Absalom, struck him and killed him. Now, I think through this Joab's motive seems to be justice. I mean, Absalom was responsible for murder and responsible for mounting a coup against the king. He slept with the king's 10 concubines, all sorts of things. But Joab's motive is also minimal bloodshed. For as soon as Absalom is dead, the kingship would naturally revert back to David, the war would stop, Verse 16, Joab blew the ram's horn. The troops broke off their pursuit of Israel. Joab restrained them. Verse 17, they took Absalom, threw him in a large pit in the forest, raised up a huge mound of stones over him, and all Israel fled, each to his tent. Now, I was reading in Dr. Woodhouse's commentary, and he noted that a hasty and ignominious burial, the burial here of throwing him into a large pit, huge mound of stones over him, that's the burial for a sinner or an enemy. He draws attention to the burial for Achan in Joshua 7:26 and the king of Ai in Joshua 8:29, both thrown in a pit, pile of stones. And the pile of stones in all three cases serves as a reminder of this is what happens to those who set themselves against the Lord and against the purposes for his people, not given proper burial. It's worth reflecting, though, on Joab for a moment, assessing Joab's character, his action. In killing Absalom, it does require, says Dr. Woodhouse, more than a simple right or wrong. His analysis is that Joab had a deep sense of justice. You see that back in 3:30, which also does not allow to spill over into unnecessary bloodletting, hence his quick ending of the war. From David's point of view, Joab's sense of justice is often misplaced. From Joab's point of view, David's love for Absalom was a dangerous weakness, like his making peace with Abner back in chapter 3. Joab would have seen that he was acting for the sake of David's kingdom, and what we do see here is in the death of Absalom we see justice triumphing over love, whereas actually if David had had his way, love would have triumphed over justice. Now, we started to explore this tension between justice and love yesterday in Daily Bible Time, and there's actually lots more to discuss, and the rest of the chapter will help us do that. I find it helpful to remember that I can't demand more than justice. I'm entitled to justice, but I can rejoice when God gives me love, when God gives me mercy. Now, more to say on this tension between love and justice. I think we'll leave that till Monday. I'll look forward to you joining us then for Daily Bible Time. God bless.